welcome to Earth is Waking Up. Today, our guest, Dr. Pedersen, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Dr. Pedersen holds 3 doctorate degrees. He has a doctorate of naturopathic medicine. He has a PhD from the toxicology program at Utah State University, where he also has PhD degrees in immunology and biology. He is board certified in anti-aging and regenerative medicine and holds a master's degree in cardiac rehabilitation and wellness. He performed an internship with Jonas Salk, the American medical researcher noted for the discovery and development of the polio vaccine. He's formulated over 150 products, was a bronze medalist in the 2003 Utah Winter Games, and is a best-selling author. Gordon has spent countless hours reviewing silver information and is frequently called upon as the world's leading authority on silver as a health tool. He is a distinguished speaker for Special Operations Medical Association and has worked with several national and international governmental organizations on the topic of silver. He's volunteered and personally funded efforts to bring silver's benefits into Africa's poorest communities with dramatic results on malaria. Again, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I was starting to fall asleep there. There you thank you.
Yes, that's amazing how much studying that you've done, how many the accolades. It just seems like the list goes on. So I'm curious just first on that, what causes you to feel like you've got the motivation to keep going, keep learning more and more and more?
Well, it's my family. My family has problems with fibromyalgia, with Crohn's disease, with celiac disease, with thyroid cancer. And a lot of times, like from Crohn's disease, we heard doctors say, you know what? He's just going to die early and suffer a lot unless you can find an alternative. So I started looking for alternatives and found that the traditional medical route doesn't have the solution, that any one different discipline in medicine doesn't have the solution. And so for my family, I just continue to try to learn the immune system, toxicology for developing products. I learned as much as I could, and it's for my family.
Yeah, wow. I've noticed similar things in my family, but maybe not as much, but that's, wow. So how do you feel like you fit in the family as the one? Did you feel it was your responsibility to kind of take care of everyone? Like, how did that come about?
Somewhat, yes, absolutely. It was just kind of something I was driven right here from a visceral response that, you know what, I'm going to do something in the process of getting a career. I'm going to do something that's going to help my family and take care of it is a great way to say, I'm going to do everything I can do.
Yeah. Yeah. So now why did that have to fall on your shoulders instead of, say, the medical establishment? Like the medical industry that we have, was that taking care of them, or?
Well, I saw Crohn's disease totally eat up my brother's life. And when he would go from attack to attack to attack, and he'd get a surgery and then another surgery and another surgery, I kind of had this picture of a colon in my brain. And it was only so long, but if they kept cutting a foot-long segment out of it, after 6 times I realized, what's he going to have here pretty soon? And they just kept saying, that's all we can do. That's all we can do. Here's some steroid hormones. Here's some anti-inflammatories. Here's some antibiotics. Here's a pain patch. And I just was going, this isn't right. There's got to be more here. And so that's kind of the way it started.
Wow. So, wow. So you've probably had some personal challenges as well in your health that also was a part of that. Can you speak to that? I think there was something I saw that when you ended up in the Olympics that kind of was a precursor to that drive.
I went to Indonesia and I spoke at a medical conference, and on the way home I had developed something that was in my head, flu-like symptoms, and my body was starting to get a little unbalanced. And so I went to the emergency room and I said, you know what, I've got vertigo and I've gotten flu-like symptoms. Can you guys help me? And they said, sure. And they put me on a gurney, and I laid there for 20 or 30 minutes. You know how it is. And then it was my turn to go in the back room, and one man held my shoulders and one man held my feet, and they said 1, 2, 3, and they moved me from one to the table. And when they moved me off the gurney, the man holding my shoulders lost his grip, bumped the gurney, and I fell on the back of my head. The other man held my feet, and so I landed on the back of my head, and my back landed on the wheel of the gurney, and it broke my back, and I woke up paralyzed from the waist down, feeding tube and a breathing tube, going, what the heck's going on? Everything in my life changed. All the goals and plans and dreams that I had to go and do things, those were off the table. I started to have to look at my life totally differently now. And I didn't know if I was going to get feeling back in my feet. I didn't know if my legs were going to work again. I didn't know if my intestines were going to digest food again. And luckily, and thanks to God and everybody's prayers and everything else that goes into the healing process, 6 days later, the inflammation started to go down and the stability of my spine started to come back. And I started to pick up, and I got about 95% of my feeling back. And I learned to walk again, and I learned to digest food again, and I learned to go through all this rehab. Part of the rehab was in a swimming pool. Part of the rehab was just on bars. And part of the rehab, they put me on ice skates. I know you're thinking to yourself, he broke his back and they're putting him on ice skates? Well, my spine has become stable, but the back was so sore. I was suffering cramping and sore back so much that part of the rehab for that was to put me on skates and strengthen my low butt muscles is basically what it is. And so as I was strengthening those muscles, I was skating, and I was skating at the ice skating rink where they held the Olympics, and I didn't know that. I was just skating. I was on the inside ring, and it was all colored red. Then the outside rings were blue, and that was where the professional skaters went. And they'd go whizzing by me a million miles an hour, it seemed like, and I'd skate my 14 minutes and step off. And pretty soon testosterone started building up in me. You know, the kind you get where you want to keep up with those guys that skate so fast. So I started trying. And I'd skate for 100 yards at a time, and then 150, and then a little more, and then a little more. And pretty soon I started getting the strength in my back, and I started pursuing those guys that were skating so fast. Well, 3 years and 3 months later, I found myself standing on the podium receiving a bronze medal at the Utah Winter Games because of rehab. So it's an interesting cycle and circle of things that I may not have ever done before if it hadn't been for that particular injury. But I realized that of the 10,500 things I could do in my life, I now could only do 10,000 of them. And I focused on the 10,000 things I could do rather than the 500 I couldn't.
That's an amazing focus on the hope and the positivity and pushing through in recovery. Wow. So another idea is that it seems like you're an out-of-the-box thinker, right?
Yeah. I didn't follow the lines when I was using my crayons in school either.
How did that come about? How did you find that you started to think differently than others? Bigger picture.
Oh, wow, you are a good question asker. This is philosophical, my gosh. How did I get that? Part of it was I was born with it, number one. Number two, I have so much energy that I was doing something even when I was in class or drawing in the lines, or I've made paintings that someday maybe you can look at around my house that I painted with a heat gun, or that I painted with a blow dryer and liquefied paint that I heated up with a blow dryer. I've painted with crayons, I've painted with, and so I don't know what it is. I just think that when you continuously ask questions, you're going to continuously grow mentally. And when you stop and get that 4-year degree and go, I've arrived, I know it, I need a career, hand it to me. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes that slows down the progress that was going on in your brain. I saw a study that said children that are age, in the second grade area, ask an average of 480 questions a day. Yeah, it's the age you're like, go play, go play. Moms are like, quit asking me about my spoon and my fork and the microwave and the. But they're like a sponge at that age because they continuously ask questions. Then I saw in that same study that the average adult 25 years of age and older only asks two questions a day. And I started to realize that may be one of the ways I explain I'm always asking questions and I'm always, doing things, and I have energy to do it. So I thank God for that inspiration.
So how do you keep that focus going through school so much? Because school, especially, seems like what I've noticed, the higher we go in school, the more programmed we are to a point, right? And so I'm curious how you maintain that curiosity.
Well, it's really easy when you look at your 6-year-old daughter and she's laying on a gurney in the hospital, and you promise her you're going to be there for her as they put her out and take her into surgery, and they're wondering if it's lymphoma, so they've got to take out these nodes, and it's a death sentence if they find that it is, or if it isn't. And all of a sudden, learning is just something you need to do for her, or for Crohn's disease, or for fibromyalgia, or for mom because she's in the hospital with something that's critical to her. And I think a lot of those played a role. And for my own health and wellness, I mean, we all have issues. We all have weaknesses. And so I just look at it as what is necessary, because I do believe the body will heal itself if we give it the proper tools. I also believe we have to learn and do what is appropriate for our body to help it heal itself, because I've met so many people that have had long chronic problems with, let's say, fibromyalgia, who wouldn't touch a probiotic for anything because their doctor didn't prescribe it for them. And 5 years later, when they finally did, it's a miracle. And it was the doctor who told them to do it. And I see this all the time, this willingness to learn, the willingness to ask questions, the willingness to listen to people is very important in the pre-healing process.
Sure, makes all the difference. What a great example of divine masculine and that male providing that you just explained. I'm just like, wow, like this guy, if he's earning karma, he's earning some of the most amazing karma.
Oh, you're so kind. I want to tell you this though, and this is kind of off the chart, if that's okay, because I feel like I can go this place with you. I haven't ever done it before, I don't think, but I take a look at people and I realize that there is more to healing than just chemical drugs, than surgery. I realize that there's an attitude to getting well. There's an attitude to learning what you can and can't do. I also think that philosophically, we have been created. And in that creation process, if we will be humble enough to learn everything we can, it will be available to us. And that includes people that surround us. And if we surround ourselves with optimistic, positive people, it seems that we gain a little bit of energy from them. And the giving process in my heart is very simply this. I see people that come to me with year-long diseases, a wound in grandma that's in a nursing home, and she's had this bed sore that's now this big around and it's open. You can see her spine and it's just horrible and awful. And the whole family has been praying for a miracle and she's been given everything she can. And it's just, she's losing hope. And they come to me and they say, is there something else? I feel like there is. And I say, well, there's always something to try. Let's see what we can do. And they'll come to me with this prayer as a group, literally saying, we're praying that you can help us. You know what that makes me feel like? Wow, that's a lot of pressure and a lot of peace. But you know what it feels like 2 months later? when the miracle of healing has occurred and grandma's wound has closed and the family brings you together and says thank you, and they might give you a nice dinner or a thank you and say, you were the answer to my prayers. You know what that feels like? And everyone has that opportunity. All they have to do is has a successful healing of their own. It might be a toenail fungus. It might be acne. It might be a cold or a flu. And when they say, you know what? I took these silver lozenges and it totally cleared up my sore throat. It's been bugging me for 2 weeks. You know what? You might be the answer to their prayer by just saying those words, giving them a little bit of instruction, giving them answers that they're looking for, but they don't know where to look for them. And I see this in every person that's willing to give, is that it's like an answer to prayer. And I've had people look me in the eye and say, do you know what it feels like to be the answer to someone's prayer? And this wasn't a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare professional. This was a mom. This was a mom who learned enough to share enough to help be the answer to someone else's prayer. And I got to tell you, that's what keeps driving me. That's what keeps driving so many other people, because I think we're at our very best when we help others most.
For sure. Wow. That's super inspiring. That's well said. Well said. I I feel that that's more important than the mechanical, the physical stuff. The physical stuff is just something that we're doing, thinking that that's all that matters a lot of the time. But I feel that there's that much deeper way of being that makes a bigger difference. It just takes longer to notice the results from it. So now, getting back into some of the physical, the technical part, I'm curious how you discovered, going through school, the difference between using the pharmaceuticals to cover up symptoms, that mindset, and which I found that even naturopathy, natural medicine also seems a lot of time to copy that model of let's treat the symptoms instead of the underlying cause. I'm curious how you discovered, going through all that schooling, how to get back to the root cause and work on treating that with something that's not pharmaceutical. Well, let's just start there.
It was from failures. And I know you're going, what did he just say? Failures for? Well, it was because I had family members that did exactly what the team of doctors would say, and they still didn't get well, and they still had to have surgery, and they still, some of the people I know actually died. And I thought, what if they would have tried something else? And then I got into this toxicology program at Utah State University. And in that program, it was 4.5 years long. And I realized somewhere in the middle of that the word toxicology was the degree I was getting, a PhD in the study of toxic. And it was drug research. And I then realized that every single drug was a poison or a toxin to the body. And that the only thing we were doing was discovering at which dose it wasn't toxic. So for instance, we can give a painkiller to somebody, and if we give it to them at 4 times the dose, let's call it morphine, everything calms down so much that you quit breathing and die. But if we give you a lower dose, maybe half the normal dose, it just kind of keeps that pain under control, and we call that a good benefit. But what's going on in the body is still toxic to the nerves and to the brain. So I learned that all drugs come from a toxic source, and then I studied other medicines, Ayurvedic and all these other different medicines, and my gosh, we're just giving a poison to your body, so your immune system will respond by getting stronger, but that only lasts for about 2 weeks, and the immune system said, that's it, I'm going to crash now, I can't do this any longer. and I learned what can we give to the body that's not toxic, that will give the body a benefit by taking the workload off the immune system. And I studied all these herbs, and I discovered that herbs cause the immune system to work harder too. Well, then I came across silver. And in a silver format, silver destroys bacteria and viruses and yeast, and there's no man-made drug that can even come close to doing all of that. So I studied it further and further, and I found that in a structured alkaline silver form, it was taking the workload off the immune system, mobilizing stem cells, and now the immune system had the ability to not only help with the infection, but now could do its second job, which is to regenerate and restore cells. And now we've got this anti-aging benefit going on from your immune system, but only because silver destroyed the bacteria, viruses, and yeast that the immune system was otherwise having to fight all the time. So I now started to see greater benefits from herbs when they took silver, greater benefits when they took it on a preventive basis. And I went to Africa and I used it in those people over there because they can't afford drugs. I mean, when you realize the latest antibiotic out there is called Platensis, it costs $1,600 to be given to somebody. And in the hospital, they might charge $1,600 a dose. In Africa, they're not going to make that in their lifetime. So they loved the fact that we had something all natural, something that worked with the immune system.
A cure for malaria. That's the Red Cross goes around the world treating people for malaria and other things, and they just let them die, as far as I understand. And so I don't feel like that's a very humanitarian mission. So can you explain a little more about?
Well, let's see if I got it in the background here. And I don't do this very often, but here it is. This is my cure for malaria. Now, we can't say cure, can we? We're in the nutritional supplement business. But on page 1, 100% were cured from malaria in an average of 5 days. So here's the plaque. Here's the study. This is published in the Indian Practitioner. So I actually went to Africa. I took all of the knowledge I had because I said, I said to my maker, you've given me degrees, education, knowledge, benefits in all these ways. And I went to a conference that the World Health Organization had, and they said more than half of the children in Africa die before the age of 5 from malaria. I said, that would be unacceptable in America. We would throw everything we had at it to stop that. So I packed up everything I had. I went over there. I organized myself with 4 medical institutions and did a multi-centered clinical trial. And the kids that walked in were the randomized subjects. And when they were diagnosed as having malaria, we asked the parents if they would like to try our new supplemental product. And it was not a prescription product. In fact, here it is. Silver, liquid silver. And so we're giving it to them. And this, by the way, would cure 2 children. 8 ounces given over a 1-week period of time was the cure. They would just swallow this, about 2 teaspoons, twice a day, and they would actually destroy the malaria. It's a parasite. It's actually a plasmodial parasite. And by destroying that actual parasite, it would leave the body, and in 5 days, an average of 5 days, they would be healthy and well 100% of the time. So I gathered this in 4 different clinical settings in 4 different hospitals, all separate from one another, and did the trials and was able to publish this article. And so, yeah, we actually have a solution for malaria. And not only that, but there's 19 other problems that were at the same time going on inside these children. Urinary tract infections, respiratory tract infections, pneumonia, and all of those were resolved at the same time. So that was placed in the article as well. And you know what? They can afford this. So orphans, how to manufacture it themselves, and they then started using it to keep themselves well, Shortly after that, the city people wanted to buy it from the orphanage, and the orphans wanted to learn English so they could read the pharmaceutical guidelines, so they could make their own silver, so they could sell it to the city. Do you see what we did here?
Wow.
We took the lowest of the low, orphans in Africa without even a roof over their head or a parent. They learned to read, they learned to work, they put it together, and now they've built cement block buildings that they can house themselves in, that they can sell their product from. Oh, and by the way, we solved their malaria problem along the way. So, you know what? I look at this kind of ironically because it doesn't require a prescription to use. And so there's no pharmaceutical company that wants to buy it up, take it to Africa, because they can make it themselves because I taught them how. And so there's no monetary reason to go save the whole continent. And that's an interesting thing to have done that much work and get that far along. Someday, well, I'm going back here in a few weeks. But anyway, someday we're going to spread as much as we can do. And, you know, in the world, you're not expected to save the whole world, whatever your talents, skills, abilities are. But you are expected to do as much for the people around you that you can. And that's just what I'm trying to do in Africa.
Yeah, that sounds a bit more helpful to me than all the free vaccines that they're getting. But that's another story.
Well, you know what? The vaccine thing is so dangerous because it's a political issue more than medical. And I just tell people, look, I've read all the information on all these vaccines. And if you're just going to get the vaccination, don't get it when you're sick. Don't get it when you have a fever. Don't get it when your immune system is not healthy. Well, those are on every one of the prescribing informations, yet here comes the children, 11 months old, coughing and sneezing and green boogers, and while they're here, let's get them caught up on their vaccinations, 3-4 shots. They're just, if you just don't break the rules that are written on the prescribing information, you're probably never going to have a problem. So what I do when I had to go to Africa, they wouldn't let me in the country without a vaccination for yellow fever. I was like, oh, yellow fever, that's a nasty shot. I'll get a fever, I'll get rashes, I might have problems with my immune system and joints, oh my gosh. And I said, wait, I'm just going to get as well as I possibly can. So I learned that in Africa, the kids got well when they drank 2 teaspoons twice a day. So guess what I did? I drank 2 teaspoons twice a day, went in totally well, totally healthy, no extra germs in my body, got the vaccination, sailed right through it without any problem. So that's what I tell people from my experience, my opinion only. Be well when you get a vaccination and don't mix too many germs together at once.
Yeah, I think the challenge for most people is not feeling like they know how to get well to start with. But so another deeper question is, how did you learn, where along the way did you learn that the core of why we have so many of our sicknesses and disease boils down to inflammation, chronic inflammation?
Well, if I could go even deeper than that, inflammation is really a fantastic thing that we can see. Yeah. So we can blame, problems in the brain on inflammation, problems in our nerves or arteries or muscles on inflammation, our organs, our intestines on inflammation. Why is the inflammation there? Going deeper, most inflammation in our bodies comes from bacteria. And our bacteria mostly comes from our intestines. So that's one of the places I always look when there's chronic inflammation, is the intestines. In addition to that, I look at viral infections. Viral infections don't cause inflammation at first because they're little teeny syringes floating around in the bloodstream, and they can't do any harm to you until they find a healthy, energetic cell and inject their DNA in there. Now the virus is inside a healthy cell, and the healthy cell is floating around in your bloodstream. Your immune system can't do anything because this is a healthy cell. But inside, you've got 10,000 daughter viruses growing. When it pops and then it goes everywhere, it just destroys you from the DNA level. So that's why I say most of the most of the inflammation is bacterial. And yeast is involved in that as well too.
That just like popped an aha in my head about Herxheimer reactions. Once the body starts getting healthier, then you have more reaction because there's those healthy cells that are getting infected and duplicating. Anyway,
Well, that Herxheimer thing is real. On the other hand, what do they say to you? Hang in there, in 2 weeks it'll be gone. Well, that's starting to sound like someone that doesn't know what they're talking about. Or do they really know what they're talking about, and doing too much will cause a problem, like overstimulating the immune system causes autoimmune diseases. So I got off topic. Anyway, you're good to be on track there. And the other thing I believe that's one of the biggest problems is people don't know why they're sick, and they don't know the cause of their illness, and doctors don't take time to tell them that. And because of that, people merely go along just doing what the doctor says, but if they knew what caused their problem, they'd look farther and do more. In this process, I learned and gathered all these medical studies in the days when we printed out paper copies of medical research, and I laid it all over this gymnasium floor, and I put it into categories, and I found people don't eat correctly. I found people don't get enough sleep. I found people need supplemental vitamins and minerals because they aren't getting enough from their diet. I found people don't exercise enough. I found people that don't get proper nutrition and are always covered with poisons from the air and the water. And so I call that stresses from poisons. In addition to that, clean water is almost impossible to find. Those are my categories of deficiencies, and I put them together in a way that all of my books, here's one of them here, has it on the top of the book, Essence of Wellness. Well, look at this. The word essence has 7 letters, and each letter stands for one principle of wellness: eat, sleep, supplement, exercise, neutralize poisons in your environment, clean water, and eliminate stress. Why did I do that? Because all the people I was working with, they didn't know how to take one fact from you or a fact from the next radio show or a fact I saw on TV and put them all together because they were only getting one fact at a time. Yeah. The word essence is a way they can remember everything: eat, sleep, supplement, exercise. Well, in this book, I put a questionnaire out. They answer 8 questions on each one of those letters in the word essence. Now they know their priority. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I wasn't getting enough sleep. I didn't know that messed with my hormones. I didn't know that changed my immune system. I didn't know that made me have diabetes. Whatever the case was, they take this questionnaire on the essence of wellness and they learn their priorities of what they need most so their body can heal themselves. In addition to that, one word, you just have to remember essence. Go to your computer, print it out, take the questionnaire. Oh, I need help in sleep. What can you do? Common sense. Well, the back of my book is all suggestions for all those different things. I presented the Essence of Wellness last year to the Naturopathic Doctors Association, and they unanimously accepted it. They're now putting it in doctors' offices so that when the patient comes in, they open up the Essence of Wellness, take this 10-minute quiz. Now the doctor knows where their priorities are, then takes the other half of the book and highlights the options that they might need. They go home with a written plan for wellness. Now they can do something because they've got a written plan. The hardest part is knowing what's wrong, having a plan, and our medical world is not always at fault. It's the insurance people that come to them and say, you can't have my people coming to see you unless you take 60 patients a day. Well, that happened to me. That happened to me. The insurance company came in and said, you're spending 45 minutes with a patient. You're telling them about all this extra stuff they don't need to know about. All that alternative stuff doesn't matter. If you can't take 60 patients a day, we're not going to send our patients to you. And they canceled sending all their patients to me for the reason that, you ready for this? Providing too much medical care. I'm
Wow.
like, are you kidding me? But the interesting thing was that in just a few months, we were totally filled up and full without any insurance, just doing money, just doing cash. People were coming to us and they were getting 45 minutes a person. They were getting all of the prevention as well as the other issues as well. So the medical world has been put under a spur of 60 patients a day per doctor.
Yeah, the cash model I see as the future of healthcare, because getting away from the restrictions and stipulations from the insurance companies and so forth. Yeah, it's a racket that's seen its day, I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, they take 40% of the money, number one. Number two, they don't pay the doctor for 90 days. So if I'm the doctor and I see a patient and the patient, it goes through their insurance, all of the money goes to the insurance company first. They take 40% plus some other billing fees. The doctor gets maybe half of the money, but he doesn't get it for 90 days. So the insurance companies are really not investing much, but they're taking half.
Yeah, that's too bad. Anyway, another story. So, okay. On
Teach
the
you to get
silver.
me. Now you know why I don't draw it within the lines.
Oh, this is perfect. I love it. This is what the visionaries, the ones that see, that rise above and see the systemic issues and work to solve those. That's where my passion is as well. And that's probably why I jump up there with some of the questions, because so on the silver, like I mentioned earlier, colloidal silver. A lot of people have heard about colloidal silver. It's a name that is easier to remember than a lot of the other stuff. So I'm curious what you've learned, how you learned it, and how you took silver to the next level.
Well, what I learned first was that silver is the number one tool used in burn centers to help heal wounds, and it keeps the infection from happening. Then I went in the lab myself and I started studying it and found that all silvers, ionic, colloidal, all of these inferior silvers of the past were all strong acids. And then we see a guy on TV and he's the blue man. And he said, well, I make my own silver and I turn my skin blue, and everybody gets all shocked and scared, and I don't want anything to do with colloidal silver. I'll look like him. Well, he made it starting as a strong acid using nitric acid. Then he put in a silver coin and it dissolved like Alka-Seltzer into the acid. A pinch of salt, he said, and then he would drink at least a half a gallon a day. All his psoriasis went away, all his seborrhea went away, all of his problems in his gut went away. He got well, stayed well, but he turned blue, and he did it to himself. When we did the autopsy, we found he didn't have one thing wrong with his body other than he had the fats in his body accumulated some silver. And I said, it's the acidic nature binding to the fats that's the problem. So I took a charge and measured the pH of the fats and found that ionic and colloidal silvers were the opposite, so they bind together. I said, my gosh, we've got to make an alkaline silver so you can take it every day and it won't accumulate in the body. That's where I came from, as I learned it worked. I learned what it did. I learned that it was a strong acid, and I made an alkaline silver, and I use structured water while other people are using tap water. And I believe water is a huge issue in wellness too. So I've got alkaline, I've got structured water, and the silver comes like this, and it's a 16-ounce bottle, 2 teaspoons twice a day, except if the coronavirus is around, you want to double that amount. And
Yeah.
then I thought, you know what? It needs to stay in place for 2 minutes in order to destroy the germ. And if you just drink it and it goes over your throat, it didn't stay in place long enough. And some people go, oh, that didn't work. It didn't work because it needs 2 minutes. So I made a gel. A silver gel now has the ability to stay in place. Here's the gel. Look how nice that looks. Now, with that, it stays in place. So even if I have a sore throat, gel goes right in my mouth and it stays in place. I brush my teeth with this. I use this on my feet. You know, that stinky foot fungus that teenagers have? Well, adults have it too. And it destroys it in about 30 seconds. But more importantly, women are using this because it's water soluble in their women regions that get yeast infections, and it wipes not only the yeast out, the bacteria and the viruses as well. So I started putting these together in delivery systems. I have silver lozenges, which I've been sucking on the whole time I've been talking to you because it just heals an overworked tissue in the back of my throat. I have soap, silver soap, non-toxic, because soap is so poisonous with all the ingredients they put in it. And today, the world is worried about transferring viruses.
Yeah.
And because they're worried about viruses, they know that most of them are transferred from hand contact. So I just put it on my hands, I rub it in, and I have 5 hours of protection. That means I can go to a convention and shake 1,000 hands for 5 hours and do a swipe test and still be no germs.
Wow.
That is important to me because silver destroys bacteria, viruses, and yeast. And about 4 months ago, the FDA banned 28 of the 31 ingredients found in hand sanitizers. You probably saw some of this on TV. Purell gets a change of label and all this kind of stuff. Well, what happened was they discovered 2 reasons that hand sanitizers needed to have their ingredients banned. One was they didn't actually kill all the germs they claimed to kill. The ones that were left became super germs. And in the hospital, nurses were going, hey, how come everybody on my wing here is getting the same bacterial infection even though I'm using hand sanitizers? The nurses were the ones that figured that out. So now here's all these ingredients that aren't working. And the second reason the FDA gave was that it damages the DNA of your skin. Harsh, toxic chemicals are damaging the skin, and skin abnormal growth would occur. So in the last 4 months, hand sanitizers are wiped right off the face of the planet almost. Not quite, but almost. And now we've got this coronavirus, and the CDC is saying, use hand sanitizers. Well, here's what you really ought to be using. Silver in a gel form. It can be used on or in your body. The liquid every day, twice a day. Lozenges, if you're out in public sucking on these, you're leaving a residue of the silver. They're non-toxic. It's alkaline structured silver, so it's better. It's different than the acidic silvers of the past, and it will not turn you blue because it's alkaline. The acidic silvers might, and let's face it, all the rest are acidic.
Yeah. So the soap, do you use that when you wash and then give yourself a couple minutes before you rinse it off?
There's the soap right there. So the soap is important to use just as you would normally use soap, and as you don't need to wait any time at all. But you bring up a good point that if you were covered with a bacterial infection, that might be wise. But I'd never really thought of it. You kind of schooled me here just for a minute. Does it make sense that would just soap yourself up and lather yourself for 2 minutes and then rinse it off? My gosh, you've just schooled me with common sense medicine. I applaud you for that.
Or even use the gel.
Yeah, those are good thoughts, really good thoughts.
Wow. So, okay, I think we're close to being wrapped up here, but I wanted to ask something. Anything for memory?
Oh, you're cracking me up. You know what I found the best thing in the world for memory is a good water, drink 20 ounces of it, and then have minerals in your system. It really works well. There is phosphatidylserine as well. As an anti-aging doctor, though, I got to tell you that we're not all getting all that much younger, and you can turn back the hands of time, but that's another conversation, and we could do that another time and talk about all the tools that actually work for turning back the hands of time. Back to you. I was just buying you a few seconds.
Great. Oh, thank you. Well, we're going to have links. We've got links here for, you've got some great books out. You showed us one, her. There's also, is it the Silver Miracle?
I don't know where that one is.
Okay,
anyway,
okay.
if you go to my website, we'll give it to you free, digitally, not hard copy, but digitally. So if you go to mydoctorsuggests.com, my doctor, spelled out DOCTOR, suggests with an S on the end, .com. Mydoctorsuggests.com has a tab for books. Open up the books. When you find one of my 3 books and you double click on it, it's going to come to you immediately digitally for free. We're just trying to get the message out there, and it's such a good message, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to use a safe form of silver, an alkaline form of silver that you can use every day, and using structured silver, you should have a benefit against bacteria, viruses, and yeast, and it's going to work with your immune system.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Gordon, for taking this time to share with us and do the work that you do. It's amazing and fabulous that, that you think outside the box enough to come up with solutions that actually give us, that empower us to have better health without the side effects and all of that. So I'm super honored and feel so privileged to have you on and get to pick your brain, ask some questions around how you got there. So
it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Many thanks for being on, and thanks to the listeners for tuning in. And here's to better health and thriving health even. Much love.